This conference will now be recorded.
Does Siri need to give her name and address?
Go ahead.
All right. Please allow the minutes to reflect as we start the Finance Committee meeting that all four members of the committee are present. If I could get a approval of the agenda.
Let me roll call.
Well, if we want to do that, I usually say all four and then just add that to the minutes, and that's fine enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, we move forward. So let's move forward with discussion about the American Rescue Plan.
All right, Mr. Chair, committee, I kept it very brief on this because we're still walking through all these things. This is the list that I have presented to the council as kind of a draft, and please keep this in mind. These are suggestions based upon what we understand that the funding can be utilized for. And
You still believe that all these are potentially
we believe that
ruled out?
these meet the spirit of what the intent of the
Spirit, I like that.
Yeah. And so, we can walk down through some of them as well too, but what we have discovered, and we've explained that as well too, is that rather than 11.12 million, we'll be receiving 11.7 million. And that has to be spent by December 31 of 2024. Those are the requirements of that. I know between Janie and Juan, all of our paperwork and the mayor for signing the documents, all of our paperwork has been submitted for this funding. I think as of today, we still have not received any funding, and we're understanding that the state will send us in 2 tranches. So we should be getting a half of this money in the near future. I think it was June 23rd or something was when we were supposed to get our first one. They're missing the mark just by a little bit. But those funds will be coming in 2 different levels. Really, when you walk through this, and maybe it is easiest just for me to walk through some of these things here because there's some really interesting projects in here that will help us with a few things. But we can utilize these funds in order to help our residents and our businesses recover from the impacts of COVID response. We can utilize the funding in order to make our facilities more COVID safe. It is in there in order to help bring everything bounce back. So really, as we walk down through there, one of the big things that was probably one of the first items within the American Rescue Plan was, of course, the convention center as being a tourist-related facility. Funding can be put to that convention center in order to help it reopen. We do have additional dollars coming from the state as well for our convention center. So the funding can be utilized there in order to help cover those costs. Again, as you know, because we weren't able to utilize the facility, we still have a debt service payment that had to be paid. And so the balance between that was there. We get into the museum, and the museum and the zoo are the next 2 items on there. Both of these areas, because we are now having a fee structure to allow people to come in there, we want to make sure that the entranceways will allow for a safe process to get in there where people don't group together very, very tightly because that is another part of the COVID-related requirements. And so the museum they received $340,000 from the state tourism in order to make the improvements. That funding, we phased out one of the initial plans of the museum about the new Goddard exhibit and all of that. And so we want to utilize some of this money to cover the remainder of that value. We believe it'll be about an $800,000 project. So 340 from the state, and then we would back with some of this money in order to build a new entrance and move the store. That would be as phase 1. The zoo farmland experience, These numbers can all move as well too, but one of the big things there is that with the IRB, we were successful in getting $2 million from Leprino to go toward the Leprino Farmland experience. And that will be, that'll include a petting zoo, that'll include some other accoutrements out there in order to educate people about the importance of ranching within our area. And so with that, again, creating some of the COVID-related requirements for controlled entrances and such will be a part of that. I threw in there because one of the things I wanted to make sure that I recommended to you was support to our business community, support to our residents. So the couple items on here. So putting some additional money into our recent Roswell Opportunity Advancement Program that we have created with the EDC, adding some more money in there that can help our downtown businesses improve their areas. As you know, when we talked about even developing out the ROAR program, ADA accessibility is a challenge because of the expense. Fire suppression is a challenge because of the expense. So the idea was that we could move money through the EDC in order to have them request those funds in order to help make the improvements, because renovating an existing building is really, really difficult for meeting all those needs. And so adding a little bit of money to that. One of the things that we discovered all the way through COVID was trying to get information out to the public. And there was, in today's world, there is not one media that works well. It used to be that we would get all of our information through the newspaper, and that was good. These darn millennials, they're out on social media, Twitter, Instagram, all of that stuff. And so we've had to expand out. So we can't forego any type. But one of the things that we did see that was very helpful was the use of the LED signage, because if people drive through to the business, to the stores and everything, they can pick up those nuggets. And so we want to add some additional LED signage. One, improve the convention center one, and then I believe we talked about the visitor center and trying to spread it out throughout the city. That was the whole concept of that one. This is a big one, and I really will make sure that we try to utilize this. One of the things that we did during the COVID response was we stopped shutting people off for non-payment in the utilities. And so for over a year, we have done that. We have not shut anybody off for non-payment in the utility system. Generally, we have about 400 habitual people that struggle to pay their utility bill, 400 different customers. We are up around 800 customers now that are in some state of back payment that is necessary. The COVID funding allows for utility payments to be utilized in order to help bring them up to date. So I know that Janie and the whole billing crew, they have been trying to utilize the state money because the state had money as well. So we're trying to direct everybody to the state money first, but then we wanted to tap into some of this American Rescue Plan money to bring everybody up to date. I always say that we're required to collect those fees or those utility bills. We're required to collect them, but the law doesn't say how quickly we have to collect them. And so my thing is that if there's somebody is 6 months behind, that's why we do payment plans, is that we don't care when the money comes back in, but we're required to get the money by law. And so the idea is to give everybody time to get there. So that's why that's there. We do want to do some additional work on the transit in order to, so we did, you've already approved the initiation of the smaller buses because they're not CDL, they don't require CDL, so they're less expensive to operate, at least within our operations. And so what that will do is that I'm assuming that we will actually end up expanding our fleet out as the need grows. But there is the ability, because part of the reason why we're going to the smaller buses is a more controlled atmosphere within the bus in order to move people around. That would match up to the COVID requirements. We get into the workout at the Air Center. We put a little bit of money there in order to talk about the Air Center Doghouse project, but one of the biggest benefits to the city has been what has happened out at the Air Center with the parking of the planes. And every plane that is parked out there for that length of time has to be maintained. So our buildings are unequipped for this much more economic development that needed to occur. So one of the things that we've been looking at is trying to expand out some of our buildings so we can get these larger planes that are parked out there in for their ongoing maintenance and get them back out. So this is a fairly good project that is based directly upon what COVID has done to us. There is some money in there for the Great Blocks project. This really actually fits the COVID related stuff as well too, even though I call it kind of a touchy feely kind of project because it gives everybody in the city another opportunity to go somewhere to come out of this whole tightening up. So what this will do is of course we have, and I think the plans are all coming out now, and I think we're doing the public input as well too. We anticipate that the Great Blocks project will run about $2 million, plus or minus, depending on what it is, how we end up with that. We'll have about 1.4 million from the state. And I'm hoping to utilize some of these dollars in order to close out that gap so that we don't have to look at a project and say, well, let's drop these pieces off to match up to the money. So the cemetery, columbariums, and community shelters. Both of these items, in my mind and my estimation, allow us to manage the individuals that need to utilize our cemetery differently. The communal shelter allows for everybody to come in a more controlled fashion rather than scattered throughout the cemetery, and so that we can manage the flow of those people for each one of their funerals. And then you get into the columbariums. What we are finding is that the columbariums, of course, is that more people are not burying, they are cremating. Thank you. I couldn't think of that number, and I was going to use a politically incorrect term. But because there are more cremations occurring now, and it's becoming more of a practice as well too, we need to set up an area so that can be utilized more. And the nice thing about it is it takes up a little less space. Probably the more difficult thing is it's more expensive because of the structures of how you place them. And so having that help to get us started with that. One of the things, outreach is another big thing is that we are working on trying to get more technology out here. Again, we talked a little bit about before this meeting started with all the Zoom, all the go-to meetings, all the contact. Our public forums can now be, we're still trying to get back to the in-person, but anybody can watch sitting at home. And so that just costs a little bit of funding. So we put a little money there because we like that outreach. We feel that we're getting more contact with the public in order to get there. Rec path and parks. If there was a department artist throughout COVID, it would have been our parks department. And we, no sports activities happening, but we had to maintain those grounds to a certain level. We had to pull back. We cut 101 jobs out of the city during COVID. 46 of them took voluntary severances or retired early. And so there was an impact on how we maintained. All through COVID, what we were doing was we were disinfecting playground equipment. We were making sure that at least anybody that wanted to get out there could at least get out there to some level. So in my mind, it's almost like the convention center being fully closed because it wasn't allowed to operate. Our parks need that assistance as well too. So I'd like to utilize some of these dollars in order to bring our parks back up. We are working on personnel and everything, trying to get our crews back up to where they need to be. But I think we'll need some funding in order to bring that up. Reinstituting tourism marketing of public affairs. I think that was one of the things, and I talked a little bit about the UFO festival. Our numbers are not much different from 2019 to this year. So the last time that we met in person in 2019 to 2021, the numbers were very close, and that's utilizing the UFO Museum metrics as to who all visited there. What we did see was an uptick in spending, and we believe that uptick in spending is based upon we're seeing more out-of-town tourists than the than the residential choice, the locals. And so, which is a good thing, but that means we need to update our tourism marketing as such. The last one on the list right now is a homeless work training program. We have been trying to find a way to implement this for a couple of years. We believe that this may be the catalyst or the trigger that can help us get it off the ground. And so the whole concept of this, it kind of follows the program that Albuquerque recently stopped. They don't utilize this program anymore, but what we do is that we are having fewer community service people to utilize for trash pickup and graffiti. So in order to do that, if we can get our homeless people off the street, get them back up, we've always tried to figure out a way, how can we help them from our point? We're not a good church. We're not a good system for that. But what we have is that we have a lot of work that needs to be done in order to maintain the city. So 2 to 3 times a week, we will put the bands together for the homeless and take them out and have them help us pick up trash, help us do graffiti. This program would work underneath the Homeless Coalition. And so it'd be a partnership there. This is the Albuquerque model, is that they work with St. Joseph's. And so the whole idea was to go through that with that method and help in some way to get them out of there, because the challenge we have is that if every one of the homeless are a little bit different to deal with, they all have different kinds of problems. Some of them we can help with, some of them we cannot. And so the idea was to try to do what we can do. And we have a great partner in the Homeless Coalition in order to help do that. So that was the list that we had. I won't digress any farther. I believe that what our intent from this point was, and I just wanted to walk through some of these things. If anybody has any other suggestions or ideas, we need to put it together on the list. We do have 11.7, and as you can tell, my total list here. And these numbers can move. These numbers are not set for either one of these items. They are objectively placed just based upon some of the assumptions we have. And there's 400,000 still to be placed into that. But I believe, Chair, that this will be coming forward fairly quickly. I think the trigger was to get through our final budget, and then once we get our first tranche, then we would probably want to initiate how we're going to get this started, because we do need to spend this money by December 31st, 2024. I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from committee members? Councilor Orpesa.
Just a question. Can we get a copy of this?
Yes, sir.
I didn't see it in the packet.
It is not in the packet. I've given it to the city council in I think 2 or 3 meetings ago, but yes, I'll make sure that.
I don't remember seeing it.
I will make sure you get it. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Yes.
So as I'm looking at this, it's a lot of things. I think the things that are easy for me are things that are, I'd say, brick and mortar, like the museum, the zoo experience, the cemetery work. Those things are easy for me. The things that I like, it's going to be harder for me to kind of jump on board with is, like, I've got $2 million that says assistance to the convention center. I just see that $2 million just disappearing. And I'm sure that I'm sure that you guys have some thoughts about what that means, but I want to be very careful that on those kind of things, because from me, from where I'm sitting, my standpoint is that those are the places where, well, that I'm a little worried too about, like, your 1.75 for rec. I want to spend money on parks and rec. That's great, but if we're talking about increasing staff, well, that money's going to run out, and then how are we?
Yes,
if you can, yeah, sure, certainly address those, but.
No, and you're correct. And the $2 million for the convention center is more of the brick and mortar. But if you read through that, and I did not read the entire statement up there, but it is also providing grants as incentives to lower the room rates within the hotels in order to bring more people in. We can lower the rates in the convention center, the people that are coming in order to offset that. I mean, we have to cover our costs of whatever it costs. Otherwise, we move money within in order to cover
It's
if
going to
we're
pay.
taking less than what the cost of that service is.
Sure.
But this is an opportunity to offset that in order to help bring us
Sure.
back. And so I don't look at this as it is more brick and mortar. We have needs over within there, the fence outside in the courtyard. This is just a very broad level, Counselor. And so I want to make sure you understand any one of these items have to be broken down farther. And so it's really, for example, even the parks and recreation thing, the staffing, I'm not worried about. We've already initiated trying to bring staff back on. That's not the fear that we have with that. But we also know that based upon the condition of some of the areas out there, because we took care of a lot of areas differently. The golf course is a great example of that. We quit weeding around the trees every week. We weed eat out around the trees every month now. If we want to bring some of that back, then we're going to have to equipment or anything else. This is very broad level right now, and I appreciate what you're saying because I agree with you. We don't want any of this funding, this one-time money in there. Another part of this thing that was out there was the ability to give a bonus to essential workers. Now, we turned all of our workers essential, so we never laid anybody off. We never got rid of any job. We could give them a bonus. My recommendation has been keep the compensation plan going for our people because a bonus is a one-time shot. And I think, this money, which is one-time money, is best for brick and mortar, just like you're stating.
Sure.
But if we give a bonus to our people just because we survived COVID, that's a one-time thing. But if we give them a 3% increase within their salary, it lasts the duration of their career.
Sure.
And so I stayed off of going that route because our compensation plan has helped all of our jobs increase by 15.7% higher than it did 4 years ago. And that's a really nice thing. And if you take our starting salary at step 1 to the ending salary of step 20, which we were at a step 8 prior to that, a salary can increase 60.5% between step 1 to step 20. So I just want to make sure that's why we stayed away from that. And I appreciate what you're saying. Some of this has not been played all the way through. I don't know what the 1.5 at the zoo farmland experience or the Lecrino farmland experience will actually do.
And even in that, it's like, and don't get me wrong, I think the farm experience is a great idea, but there might be higher priorities than
Correct.
at the zoo, especially that. So, but that's an easy one. The zoo, there's so many places to spend money, and it's clear what we need. It's pretty clear that the brick and mortar work needs to be done out there. It's, the museum's an easy one. It's something we've been talking about a long time. It's those other really large ones that are really ambiguous. And I think, it's nice to have this big influx of money, but I still want to make sure that we use the same level of scrutiny on how we're spending the money as if it was from GRT.
I would hope that you would.
And
The ambiguous nature of what we are is based upon, I need your input in order to get it more detailed. All I'm giving you is the recommendations based upon what staff has talked about with how this funding can be spent. So yes.
So how will this come? Will this come forward in pieces? Will this come forward as one resolution? Do we know?
In my mind, it's probably better to come in pieces so that we can eat the elephant bite by bite rather than as a full chunk. And I think you allude to something as well. We have elected officials that will have input into this as well too. And so I believe that there are things on here that will trigger positive responses out of half of you. There are things that won't trigger on the other half. You have a lot of debate that's going to have to happen. And so in my mind,
You offer this as a starting point.
this is the starting point. Yeah. And these numbers are just estimates based upon what we've seen in other projects and everything else. And so I would say that it'll probably be easier to take it as we get things prepared and we bring them forward. I really believe that's probably going to be the best way. I know we'll be talking about the budget here, and so there's some things that are coming forward that we're still trying to put information together on as to what the true value of that is. And I appreciate what you're saying, Council.
The one thing that I think is, whether it belongs on this list or not, I don't know. I'm not saying, but the one thing I think we need to at least discuss that potentially should be on this list, or if it fits or doesn't fit on this list, is maybe it's outside the scope of the American Rescue Plan, but is the ballpark project. We have invested a bit of time. We've invested a little money in that. We know that's an elephant we're not going to be able to eat in one bite. Is there a bite of that ball field project that we should be grabbing with this as well? I think that would be the only thing I don't see on here that I think is worth a discussion.
And that's a good point. And I will tell you that the nice thing about the American Rescue Plan, it doesn't restrict entirely. So funding that we put to some item on this list may free up other money on the other side, which is really a good thing because we get to move around the chips on the table accordingly. The ball fields, again, we are spending $850,000 on some infrastructure and a site plan. So we have a true idea of what we're going to do with that concept. Our early estimate on that project was a $13 million project. And we have some, and what Councilor is alluding to is that, because we've been talking a little bit about that, we have some ideas about how to generate the revenue in order to cover the cost of that. We just haven't gotten to that conversation yet. So.
Okay. Councilor Kennard, do you have anything?
No.
Councilor Foster, you're joining us this morning. Do you have anything you'd like to share or ask?
I actually like the 300,000 for the homeless work. I mean, it bodes back to historically when the big oil companies were having trouble with the Bedouins and with pipelines, because the Bedouins would go along and just, when they needed to go across, they'd blow a hole in the pipeline to go through wherever they needed to go through. Well, the oil companies came through and started hiring the Bedouins to protect the pipeline, and suddenly those holes quit getting blown up. And not that the homeless create a lot of the mess, but there is some of the mess in trash in our area being created by our homeless population. So if we hired them to clean it up, it might be less apt to create the mess. So, and it works. It works. It helps the homeless coalition, and it helps us. So I really like that one.
Okay. Anything else? Councilor Stubbs, welcome. Do you have anything? Oh,
Councilor
Vince is here as well.
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Any questions, thoughts?
Not yet.
Councilor Stubbs.
I agree an awful lot of what's going on nationally with cities, and so that's where this question is coming from. I, like Councilor Foster, appreciate working with the homeless, but that's the only thing I really see on the list that touches individual people in need. And so what I'm wondering is if you considered any kind of rental assistance, and if there even is the need here. I mean, I don't.
We considered that. We are assisting with the state funding that is set aside for that rental assistance, trying to get word out there. But I would disagree with you just a little bit. This utility coverage for these individuals that are behind, the hard part is that we have this regulatory hammer that we have to use as well too. And I'm going to have to make all these people pay up at some point in time. And I am trying to find a way so that we don't have to go after somebody that has already been kicked in the shin and is trying to pick themselves up, whether they've lost their job or something else. We don't have the ability to say, nah, you don't have to pay, because we have an obligation to all the other people paying. And then I would say that, part of the idea from the convention center was to try to put money back into the businesses as well too. The hotels were hit hard. And so if we can get them to keep their average daily rate a little bit lower, that should generate more business. We're not asking them to take less. We're asking them to set their rate, but can we help assist so that when those people coming in, they only get hit for $50 rather than $80?
But they're not residents.
They are not residents, but yeah, we hope.
Well, maybe some.
Well, the big thing is that we don't mind the locals being involved in everything, but that's money that is already here. I would rather take somebody's money from Albuquerque, when they come down here for the weekend, I want them to stay all weekend, spend their money here and then go home because so that we can take care of our people, but use their money to do that. And so, and I would say that the 400,000 into this ROAR program, or anything to do for the business community would be good too, is that we want them to bounce back out of this thing. I think the one thing about the ROAR is that this is not, it's not revenue replacement such for the businesses because they got hit for whatever reason. This is so that they can do something extra or better than what it was, or meet our codes, or meet whatever the standard is. I know that the ROAR program hasn't gotten off the ground very well with the EDC yet. I mean, we gave $150,000. It's there. COVID hit, and I think we all tried to figure out what the heck was going on at that point in time. So, but strengthening that up there, you know, we still have a lot of downtown business. Every project that we have that comes in does not have fire suppression because it wasn't required way back when. If we're going to salvage these buildings, we need to help, or we should help, I think. And so there is money tucked in there, and there is the ability for you as a city council to adjust how some of this is going. And we can do it within transit as well too. I talk about the brick and mortar buses, but we have the ability for all of that. So
I guess I'm just thinking of more immediate needs, and I appreciate what you're saying because that's building the community, which builds people. But I just don't know if there are real concern.
one of our challenges is that our hands are tied a little bit from how the state operates as well too. And so some of these things like the rental assistance and everything are very cumbersome in order for a city, a statutory city like us to initiate. I think the rules change if we were home rule, but I think it becomes very difficult to try to figure out how to make sure the T's are crossed, I's are dotted with some of that. So what we've tried to do was take a weight off in a different area, and then hopefully we can utilize the other assistance that's out there. The nice thing about any emergency and everything is that additional dollars come from HUD, come from, you know, any of those federal agencies as well too. We just have to make sure that we can tap into that the way we have to. Happy to be a fiscal agent for any of that federal money. Happy to do that if we can get it back out to the people. So I think Councilor
Patha.
So help me understand the $1 million utility recovery.
Okay.
From what I'm hearing from you, is that anybody that is owing money right now is in back payments, they are eventually going to have to pay.
Yes, sir.
But how is this $1 million going to be used?
We're going to pay it for them.
So I don't understand. So the $1 million is going to pay all the bills or not all the bills?
I mean, it's going to pay whatever portion of that is. The $1 million is just a holder for this whole process. So in the American Rescue Plan, we have people that have lost their jobs. We have people that can't pay their bills for whatever their reason is. Excel Energy, the city of Roswell, I believe the gas companies, we all decided to not shut anybody off for non-payment because we did not know what was going to happen with all of our families and everything. So it is not a waive payment. We've just chosen not to shut them off. If they've utilized the service, they still have to pay that service. What we've done is we can build them out time in order to pay. Like I said earlier, is that by law, we have to recollect that money. We're obligated to recollect that money for our water and sewer company. We don't have the ability to waive it. And so that means that everybody that has this back payment, and I'll tell you that some of them are $3,000, $5,000 for small families, that we have to give them time in order to catch up. Otherwise we crash. They will not be able to function.
But I'm not understanding how the $1 million is going to play as far as paying their
I don't
bills.
either.
The federal money can be used to pay other people's bills.
That's what you didn't make clear.
So any customer that we have that wants to utilize the federal system, and this is how we do it with the state money right now as well too, you come in, do an application, we will help you do the application. Now, the problem is that we don't do the application because of state money. But for our money, what finance will set up.
Our portion of the American Rescue
Our
Plan.
portion of the American Rescue Plan money will be, they will come in, they will submit the information that we need, a determination will be made, and then we will pay the bill with the federal money to our utility. Does that help?
If I can interrupt,
If the bill is paid by this money, then why are we asking the people to pay it?
so
Because the people are required to pay.
let me. So as a municipality, we have the anti-donation clause. We cannot just say, you know what, because you lost your job because of COVID, we're going to forgive that bill. We do not have, under the statutes that we are under as a municipality, we don't have that authority to do that. However, the federal money can be used. All we are is a fiscal agent. This does not become our money. We're the fiscal agent for the federal government. We can say, okay, your family owes $1,500 on the utility bill. They fill out the application. Okay, this is very, very clear that because of COVID, you've had a hurt in your family, not been able to. Now, as the fiscal agent, we can't donate as a city, but the federal government can. And we take the federal government's money and we now that wipes the slate clean for that family.
Not really, because they still have to pay for it.
No, sir.
No,
We're the federal government, just like people who are getting a check in their account right now for children. That's money that goes to them and they use it for whatever. We're taking and we're writing a check on behalf of the federal government to the city of Roswell for $1,500. They no longer owe the bill.
my example is going to be very, if you think through my example, you won't like my example, but I'm $100 short on my utility bill for this last year. I have $100 that I cannot afford to pay because I no longer have a job or anything. We have to take that money from that customer. The city has to take that money from the customer at some point in time. We can't just waive it. So the federal government has the American Rescue Plan money that says, hey, I've got $100 here. We can pay that individual's bill to catch it up. And now they no longer have to pay the bill. So I don't have to pay the $100 because the federal government gave me $100 in order to pay that bill. That's how the American Rescue Plan works.
I just heard you say that they have to pay.
Yes.
They do.
No, they don't.
Well,
They personally don't have to pay.
It has to get paid.
Yes, it has to get paid. And that's, you said 5 times, and it confused me too. You said 5 times that these people will have to pay their bills. But what you mean is somebody has to pay their bills for them. We can't pay their bills.
does that help? Yeah.
Yeah,
Somebody has to pay that bill,
that makes sense.
and it can't be us.
This is not us.
I mean,
I understand this.
Okay.
This is a flow-through account.
Yeah.
But again, if the government pays their bill, they will no longer be responsible.
That is
for
correct.
Payment.
That is correct.
Okay.
It has been taken care of. And I apologize for any confusion with
I see how that's, yeah.
customer and how. I think that's the best way. Somebody has to pay this bill. Federal government says, I'll pay the bill.
I just have one last question. The first monies that we received and the city employees that got COVID, and maybe some are still getting COVID, I don't know. Are they being paid vacation time or sick leave time through COVID money? Or are they responsible to take?
No,
vacation or?
the COVID money that was related to getting infected by COVID expired back in March 31st. So those funds that we were able to receive that would go into that. So currently anybody that now gets COVID or has the flu or anything, they need to utilize the benefit time that we are providing them as far as sick. Hopefully they don't have to get into vacation because we really like people to get away. But
But this money cannot be used for that?
I don't know if it's listed to that, but I would say that there may be a way to adjust it to do that. There is nobody that is being negatively hit as far as I know. I mean, and I've got HR going, everybody is being taken care of.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a lot of employees that have been affected by COVID?
In the very beginning of COVID, we did, but now, no.
Yeah, in the beginning, I don't know, we didn't do any analysis on how many were impacted. We still have people that are based upon wherever they're at or who they run into, that they are still taking time off because of a COVID virus. So we still have people that are testing and that are being found positive, and so they have to take that time off as well too. So, but it is not on any real magnitude. I mean, it is single digits percentage of our group now.
But if they don't have sick leave or annual leave, they're still getting paid to be off on COVID?
No.
Yeah, for donations.
Yeah, we have a sick leave donation pool. So anybody that is negatively impacted, we do an all-call out of HR, and generally everybody's taken care of because, your old sick leave policy from quite a few years ago, there are individuals out there carrying 3,000 hours for sick leave. They generally will not ever use that amount of time, so they do dedicate that money out. I've got a lot of examples with that, but the one thing that we do guarantee that if you are impacted by COVID and there is no way to keep them paid, they are not jeopardized for their job either. So we make sure that there is no negative impact to their relationship. But we've not had very many situations that somebody has not been receiving at least a benefit check with it that I know of. And I'm getting a shaking of the head from our HR corner over there.
I have a question. So the $1 million for the utility, is that based on the past due, or is that allowing for a little bit of cushion?
It's based on the past due, and it's based upon, we generally tracked our 400 habitual, the people that were challenged on a regular basis. So we're extrapolating from what we understood about that out there. We believe that there's probably about $800,000 of misfunding in order to bring everything up to date.
And I mean, this might be getting into the weeds, but the application process, I mean, does everybody who applies qualify or is determined?
Well, the qualification in my mind is that if they're 3 months or farther behind, there's probably the need to do that, to bring them up to, especially because I don't think we're going to have a lot of restrictions that we're going to go back and, all right, how many kids do you have? How, do you smoke? There's no reason to do any of that. We want to bring everybody up to date. We'll look at their history as well too. We'll look at, I think one of the questions we'll have to ask is, do you have a job or not? Because maybe we can offer a job as well as take care of the utility bill. I'm just guessing.
Let me say,
but the idea is to bring everybody up to date. And
so once they get caught up, let's say they fall back behind again. I mean, like.
So anybody that falls behind today or pre-COVID, all they have to do is come in, they sit down with finance and they enter into a payment plan. We're required to collect the money, and as I've said, we don't have a timeline as to when. Now, everybody that doesn't pay puts a burden on those that are paying as well too, because we have to cover the cost of the services. So there's this balancing act that goes all the way through that. So all we're asking for is a payment plan to catch them up. Our whole goal is to catch them up so they never fall behind. We were working a deal with Rhonda before she retired with Wes, because some of our habitual individuals are not, and I hate to say it this way, I don't mean it in a bad way, but they're not as highly educated. They don't know how to run a checkbook. I mean, they took it out of schools. They don't teach you how to take care of your finances. So the idea was to put them into a class, help them learn how to manage it a little bit better so that they don't fall behind. And so the idea was just trying to, rather than to just hit them with the regulatory side, we were wanting to educate them and bring them up. We are willing to do a payment plan. The payment plans, if they come in and do a payment plan, we don't hit them with the fines that are associated with a late payment as well too. We don't need to collect that money if we can fix the problem. And the idea is to get the root problem.
I guess just the clarification, I'm sorry, Jason, okay, after this money is spent, we're not going to, I mean, we don't have a way to help catch.
We don't have a mechanism in order to, yeah. And so what we do is that, and we will continually fall into the payment plans in order to get there. Generally, and you guys have done this before, I think those of you that have been on the council for a while, we do what's the intent when we do just, if we can't find the person to pay anymore, then there's a shoring up through the accounting officials. Yeah.
Let me just say, and anybody else who has some say, I'm not, we'll cut you off. We'll take those, but this is just a general description. I think, maybe we're trying to get into the finite, which is good because we've got to get there. But these are for conversations coming up fairly quickly after we've got a budget finalized. And this is sort of the broad spectrum, and then it'll funnel down into the specifics as we go through this. But just for clarification on that. So, because we're not going to make a decision on
just
any
reach out, any one of us, HR, finance, Juan, myself, just reach out. Well, we're happy to talk about this thing. We talk a lot about the implications of everything that we've talked about here, as well as what we're trying to present to you in order to help you make your decision. So,
okay,
Thank you. And thank you for working through that 1 million, because I was confused on that as well as I guess. The talking about the hotels and basically supplementing the cost of hotel rooms. I think the heart behind that is we want to help our hotels. If you guys, if staff really believes in that policy, because that one to me is a hard one to swallow. I'm gonna have to see numbers or research or something saying how that's really gonna help drive more hotels. Otherwise, I'd assume we can still help hotels with that money, but let's do it in a way that's, because I don't know at the end of the day, if you lower your prices by 20, maybe it's true. Maybe you guys can find the data and show it to me. But if they lower their prices by $20, then how that's going to is it going to get that many more people in versus making an investment, something that, say like a tourism attraction, it's going to continue to pay dividends beyond whenever this money runs out.
So and the intent, and I will leave it with you guys as well too, because the American Rescue Plan money has the ability, which is not normal for a lot of these funds, to grant out to private individuals, whether it be the utility customers, whether it be the businesses. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we balance through the things that we can do to increase the safety within our community of our stuff, but also help those that we rely upon to contribute to us as well too. And we're happy to walk through the analysis of that, but if there's a better way or a better.
What I'm hearing you say is that you'd like some part of this to be able to something that we grant out to businesses, potentially the hotels.
Yes.
That is important.
That is important to us is that because, you've heard all the stories. I mean, you're a business person yourself. You've heard all the stories with that. I would like to see some of this money because it has the ability to do that and to grant it out. The EDC in the city did very great with the CARES Act money that went to the business as well too. We established a process very quickly. We got that money out to those people that needed it. We get a portion of that money back if they succeed and if they survive. And so the whole idea is that let's try to help these people on that side. It doesn't always have to be about the brick and mortar that we always see. Sure. And so I'll leave you with that because I really want
that helps.
If you have an idea of what other ways to do this, because this money allows for it. So
great, appreciate that.
Councilor Foster.
Just to touch on that, I too have kind of reservations to doling out to one time to hotels But I can see it easily using it much as we use lodgers tax to prime and pump, bring big events in to fill those beds to help them out in that aspect of it. And then that would be continuing, I mean, then we have that trickle down. As we've always thought, our UFO festival doesn't fill the beds. It won't pay for itself in that week that we have the UFO festival, but over the 365 days, it brings people in all the time because of it. And 2 million can go towards bigger events, concerts, stuff like that. If we can, if that's allowable, that would bring other people in and help fill those beds.
We talked about also doing brick and mortar at some of these places as well too. Fix up the lobby.
Sure.
Put a wooden alien out in front of your place because people take pictures, right? No, but it is. So it's like, let's do something brick and mortar for them as well too. I mean, we have a lot of mid-range hotels. We don't have a lot of high-end stuff. It's all based upon the business and tourism type traffic. Give them a more better experience. And so those are all the options. So
Great.
I'll leave it with you as to.
Councilor, do you have anything else? Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank
we'll
you.
move on. Is that good? Okay. All right. Fantastic. Let's move on now and get into action. Let's go ahead and talk about the final budget adjustment.
This is a resolution for the year-end budget adjustment that's required by the state of New Mexico, the Department of Finance and Administration for year-end adjustment for FY 2021. The adjustment needs to be approved and submitted by July 31st. This slide shows the revenue, the increase in the budget for the revenues that we needed to do to true up what we actually received. It was 656,456. Budget adjustments for transfers. The majority of this was the gross receipts true up to what we actually received from the reduction that was done in gross receipts for the COVID timeframe. The next one is the expenses that we need to true up. Some of these are movements of budget for CDBG wasn't in its own fund. We moved that, and in order to do that, we have to move the budget with it. The total budget adjustments on expenses is 4.8 million. And that's the adjustments we're looking at bring us current with no negative balances.
Mhm.
I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions or comments from any members? Yes, sir.
So I think my question is, I don't know if you're not gonna be able to give me an answer right now, I assume, but you may be able to take a swing at it. So we are basically, this is 4.8 million that we didn't budget that we spent. Now, some of this money is going to be, there's going to be income attached to it that we weren't expecting. That's why it went up. But some of it is actually, we went over budget.
And let me clarify, when you look at the numbers here, let me, just at the top, the CDBG money was budgeted and was expensed. It was in the only issue there was it was in the wrong fund.
Okay.
So
that's even yet another problem then.
Well, and that's what we're correcting. That
Sure, which is fine.
Putting it in the correct fund, because historically it was placed in a different fund. And you look at the big one on the bottom, 3.6, that's cell 5A construction. So, and that's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at Exhibit A here.
Page 8.
Page 7.
Page 8 is what
That's your expense.
We're talking about expenses. Expenses is page.
That's your transfers.
Okay, so page 8 of this 4.8 sum begins, am I looking at this wrong? Where does that sum start from? That's part of Exhibit A.
Yes, but it starts from that page.
Page 8.
It starts from page.
No, the next page, that page. What you're seeing here in this slide is just condensed taking away some of the titles and everything else. It's just basically giving you just the numbers.
You're looking at three different, the first page is revenue, the
Okay.
second is transfer,
Yes,
and then you've got the expenses.
Okay, so there isn't a total on transfers.
They zero.
They zero, yeah, of course they zero ultimately, I understand that. So I guess, why are we, like on these transfers, like say transfer to golf or zoo, or why are we making, how much are these off of what we expected to transfer? Why are we having to make a correction? Because we obviously budget transfers in the beginning. So this, like, for instance, we'll just take golf, because it's an easy one to pick on. It's 200,000 more or less. Are we 10,000 off from the original number transfer that we expected? Are we 50,000 off from the original? You see my question
I
is?
see what your question is. So remember that the zoo, the golf, and the museum, for example, are separate funds.
I understand that, yes.
But it goes to your question, because we originally, when we start the budget in July 1st, we anticipate this is what we're projecting we need to transfer in. Now, all of that is based on projections of both revenue and expenses. If the revenue do not materialize, for example, last year was all COVID. So you'll see for example, the zoo, they hardly generated any revenue.
I understand that, but I guess that's my question. So we're wrapping up the end of the year with these numbers, correct? And we're making the adjustments from the end of the year. Okay, so what I don't see here, the information I don't have is, okay, at the beginning of 21 budget, we had a certain number that we were going to transfer out to these entities. There was gonna be a number. This is the final number. What's the difference between what we expected to transfer out and what we actually did transfer out? Because that's where we were off on the budget. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Am I making sense of what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I will say the zoo and the golf were part of general fund when you all did the budget last year. We put those in their own funds, and that's what this is doing.
That's not what I'm saying, though. I am asking, on the zoo, how much more money did we spend or any of these things than what we actually budgeted? Because I think that's important, because when we have this number down here at the bottom of 4.8 million, and we didn't really go 4.8 million over budget, but we did go over budget on some things. And what was that?
I'll
Go ahead, and then I have something to
a little
say.
bit more, and then maybe Janie and Juan can kind of help answer that. So the question from the council, and this is my interpretation of the question as well too, is that, our transfers to a certain point are based upon the actual money that we receive, and then we print transfer out. Now, we don't set these transfers based upon a certain percentage that goes from here to here. So it is set up on an estimate that is out there. What the council is asking is that how did these transfer numbers change from what we had previously had there? And why are we shoring up the transfers? I think that's my understanding of where that is at. So transfers out to golf, we anticipated that it would be X. Now, the whole idea now is that it is now Y.
Sure.
And it is based upon, did we not generate all the revenue that we anticipated in the budget or any of that? I believe that's my understanding.
Yeah.
And that's I'm trying to.
Because if the transfer was exactly what we budgeted in the first place, it wouldn't be on this list.
We wouldn't need to short up.
We wouldn't need to be updating the final actuals, what we're talking about.
Can I?
Sure, jump in.
So let's just take the museum, for instance. We're desirous to get to a 70-30, correct? Part of that was within the budget to do so. I think maybe when we did of course, it's been a whole year ago when we made all this process, but we were hoping that COVID was going to be something that's going to last just a few months. It lasted significantly longer. They were not able to bring in the revenue that we expected for them to be able to. So that is why the transfer amount is much more than what. That's what I'm saying. But
that's my question. Is it how much?
Yeah, that provides an explanation a little bit farther. But the question is that how much did that shift?
How much did we have to cover because of COVID?
Or whatever the reasons are. Because, when we set the 70-30, we'd had 0 fees for the museum at the time as well too. It took a while to set the fees for the museum, and then we hit COVID. And so we had to mess with being open at all in order to collect revenue. That's what the question is that
Yes.
why, or how much is that different?
Some of these might be like $1,000 different, but it's just.
And so I
Paperwork.
think
Some of
the
them might
challenge
be
with
500.
staff right now is that what they've done is they've shorted up to the actual numbers.
Right.
But the counselor is asking what moved, how did it move and
How
what?
far did it, and it goes back to something, and I trust staff.
Right.
But it's also our job to verify, okay, did we spend an extra $500,000 on the museum we didn't budget? I'm not saying that was wrong, but we need to be sure that we, as the city council, understand that we spent, we get pretty upset when something comes through that's $100,000 and we want to know, we do that. And so these are big numbers that are moving around.
Yeah.
And I don't just want them to be like, oh, okay. And
I believe I'm not going to be able to answer that.
So Counselor, so let me ask you this. Are you requesting an itemize on every one of these, or are there just specific ones that you need?
Well, I don't know.
The reason I say that is that we have to close the end year.
Yeah.
We have to make it zero out. So, but between now and council, I think the staff could probably get you the
Sure.
information that you need.
I think what would be helpful is if we had, what was the original budget for the transfer of the zoo? And then we'll be able to see that differential, because then we'll be able to see, is this a big deal or not?
Because I think as long as we're talking the same balance, I think the answer is fairly.
Yeah. Now, sometimes there will be like.
I would say a lot of them are the same type of answer. And so yes.
Okay, because again, it's hard for me to be like, and obviously we're going to have to close the budget out regardless, but again, this is part of the reporting.
Yeah, and this is the shoring up, and I mean, and that is what happens. A budget 12 months ago.
I want to be able to tell my constituents that, no, we did not spend an extra 4.8 million.
Yeah, right.
We did not go 4.8 million on our budget, but I can't confidently with this information tell them, I don't know how much we went over budget.
Right.
Because I can't compare these to budget. Does that make sense what I'm asking? Okay, great. Thank you. I yield.
Yeah. And yeah, I understand that. And again, that's why I bring up the Cell 5A project, because
You guys are comfortable with, all right. Yep, we got it.
Ned, did you have any questions also on the expense? You had said something about that earlier.
Well, these are expenses, but I didn't have any specific questions on the expenses.
Okay.
No, I think it was just the general question of how far did all these move?
Sure.
Okay. It would apply to the expenses as well, though. We'd want to know what those budgets were originally and how far did we have to move? Because budgets move and we make adjustments and it's fine, but I think we just need to know if there's anything, and if there's anything that we need the yellow flag or red flag and say, hey, Joe, this moved a lot. We're worried about this kind of thing.
And it goes into all the damage claims as well. You don't know if there's a damage going to happen or not. And so,
Sure.
yeah,
Great.
and
I yield.
should be able to explain.
Okay. Counselor Stubbs and Counselor Best are probably going on over for the other meeting that we have. So
I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. So I just want to explain if they had to leave. Okay. Is there any other questions concerning this? Counselor Kenner?
No, I think that would be beneficial if we had an idea, but I agree with Jacob. I mean, I totally understand it, but it would be nice just to know for the future what we're looking at.
We'll provide that for the council meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Are y'all gonna go ahead and start? Okay, thank you. I'll join y'all as soon as I'm done. Okay, so we have the resolution to approve the year-end budget adjustments for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. It's in the full council. Do we have a motion?
Sure, Chair, I will move to send to full council resolution 21XX final budget amendments for FY21 budget.
And this needs to go to regular agenda. This wouldn't. Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving to the next item on the agenda, let's go ahead and speak about the resolution approving the June 30, which is the fourth quarter report, which is required to state.
Yes, the State of New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration requires that we submit to them the fourth quarter DFA report, and it's also due by July 31st. On that, you can see this is the summary report. The general operating fund, we started off with 10.5 million in cash. We had 14 million, 14.5 in investments. Revenue was 53 million. We did transfers of 5.9 million out, almost 6 million. Expenditures were 36 million. The adjustment in the adjustment column is what takes us sort of from an accrual-based accounting to a cash basis. Leaves us a balance for the general operating account of 22 million. Our reserve is 3 million. And so our adjusted balance is 19 million, 19.7. The ones under that are a little, all of the different categories of funds that we have. The bottom portion are the enterprise. So we had a total cash beginning balance of 32.8 million, investments of 27.8, revenue of 95.1, transfer 0. The expenditures were 86.4. Our total adjustment for all of our accruals was 17.5 million with a balance of 51.8 million. Reserves was 3 million and it left us an adjusted balance of 48.8 million.
Any questions or concerns?
This is the detail of it.
If you'd like.
Give it to Jacob.
I said, no, thank you. I think she's a little sarcastic this. Councilor, let me just report. Did it do any from the committee, Councilor Pace, any questions, concerns? Okay, Councilor Foster.
It kind of goes back to the last questions we were having, but where do the museum, the zoo, and golf course fall on this? Are they following the operations fund, or do we instead have them broke out solutions? I know they're not quite right.
They're under the general operation fund.
All right. I think it'd be nice, since we are kind of having them as their own fund, have them broke out just so that we could see that, and it might go towards answering some of Jacob's questions.
And this right here is, this is the way that the state wants there. So the states, but we could probably to get that information together as well. But the state has their own sort of plug in the information.
State really doesn't care.
Exactly.
But if we do, I think it would be nice if it was brought to us in that format, just so that we have that ability to see where we are on the budget for those.
The only thing, Mr. Chair and Councilor Barca, I would say is that this report, it comes directly from the DFA system. So that's why we're presented it in that format. We can do a supplemental that will tie in, but we won't be able to modify this particular.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think when you hit budget, that should be the supplemental for it, because you'll see these numbers tied to what Juan is fixing to present.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, thoughts? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion. We need to send it to full council, regular agenda as well.
We can send, you want to go regular agenda? We can send it
Regular
to-
agenda, it's just so there's clarification.
Sure. All right, then, Mr. Chair, I move to send the resolution 21XX approving the June 30, 2021 fourth quarter DFI financial report to full council.
Second.
We have motion and second to send the resolution adopting and approving the fourth quarter for DFA. Any other questions, concerns? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on, this will be the resolution to and approve a final budget for our fiscal year ending June 30, 2022.
Mr. Chair and Councilors, so here we're going to be covering just the final budget. We're going to cover just some of the highlights of the changes. DFA does require a resolution for the final that is due by July 31st. I do want to commend the finance department and Janie for all the work they did to shore up and close fiscal year 21, because now we can tie in the beginning cash balances that you will see in the summary sheet to the ending cash balances in the fourth quarter report. So we'll go ahead and get started. So what I passed out is a better copy of that's printed out in your packet to highlight those funds that were changed. All of those highlighted numbers are the ones that had a little bit of a change. And now we'll go over some of the changes. But this is just a snapshot of of all the numbers that have changed. And as you can see, of course, there's all of the first column, which is beginning cash. Most of those numbers changed to reflect the fourth quarter numbers. And we'll cover some of the reasons why those numbers changed. So that kind of gives you a snapshot of all of the different, but when you look at some of the operating personnel, you can see some of them were changed, others were not. So going into the detail of the summary of changes, and this is what I'll be covering that highlighted, that hit all of the different yellow numbers that were in the summary sheet. So we'll start with revenue in the general fund. We added a grant activity of $59,000. So basically that is the only change, is that $59,000. Human resources, we do have a new compensation study that's coming up, and we added that cost. We got received the proposal. 5 is for that purpose. Under finance, we have M&R building. We shifted the model from last year, having consolidated some of our IT, some of our marketing, some of our facility. Now every department is going to be responsible for some of their repairs in their buildings. Some of the departments will need to shore up. And for example, in the finance, we had also some damage claim pending, some money that we received. And of course, that will also assist with some of the repairs that we had recently with some of the leaks. And then of course, once the community development moves out, we're going to be installing a drive-up window in that building over there where finance is going to be going. And then facilities, some of the reasons for the adjustments for purchase order carryover. Remember when we started developing the preliminary budget, it was around April, May, there were still a lot of POs out there outstanding. And so some of these you will see are PO carryovers and project carryovers that did not as of June 30th. Police department, we have a second TASER 7 purchase of $71,000. Advertising open positions under the police department of 14. IT upgrades and service agreements. Again, those are carryover purchase orders. For fire department fuel and ambulance contract. $110,000, those two items there. The lease office space and property reports. So that is the new lease agreement that we have for community development. Now that we're going to have to make a lease payment, that is part of that number there, as well as Todd, now that he is doing a lot more work with some of the property, getting appraisals, getting those properties disposed of. We allocated some funds there so he can have the ability to procure some of those services. In engineering, M&R vehicle, again, some of those small items that we needed to budget. And then we have some additional project carryover with hosting and public affairs. And we transferred an additional of $395,000 for roads. Because we ended up, and you will see a sheet at the end, we started with what we thought was going to be the ending cash balance in May. But of course, once all the POs and everything is closed out, roads department needed an additional $395 transfer from the general fund over so that we don't end up with a negative balance in the summary sheet.
Real quick question on that. And I mentioned this, I think it's city council meeting, but I want to mention it again because I don't want it to be forgotten. And that is, as we talked about potentially leasing more space, I know we're leasing 2 spaces. At some point, it would be great if we get the staff to do an analysis on the benefit of leasing versus owning. And I don't think I've seen any data on that. So I just wanted, let's not forget about that, because if that's a long-term strategy, let's make sure that we've looked at the numbers and we've got the data to support that decision.
No.
All right. Now, this is staff's portion of what needs to go into the budget, their requests and moving forward to put in here. Are there any questions or comments about what's presented or what we have here? Okay.
And this is only one.
It's just general fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
So moving on into the other categories that are special revenue, as you can see there, we added a new fund for DFA that was not in the preliminary. That is required by DFA. They specifically want us to use a separate fund for those monies when they come in. And of course, you see there in the zoo some project carryover and upgrades, additional damage claim pending. Cemetery, a lot of PO carryover of projects that were not completed by June 30th. Recreation fund, additional for some concession supplies. And then we're adjusting, there is a fund for recreation construction. That's just adjusting the number to reflect what the true beginning cash number is, as opposed to what the preliminary number was. General fund transfer in, again, to the road fund, we transfer out, we transfer in. And then the fire fund, the sort of carryovers, and the other two are adjusted damage claims of funding. So that's in the special revenue fund categories. Any questions on those? Okay, you've got.
Sure.
And then in the enterprise funds, we start with the air center. That is the county's $2.6 million of the southeast infrastructure improvements. So we added that money as well. And as well as you can see, there's some additional damage claim adjustments that we finally received the monies in solid waste and the air center. And then in the water department, we are accounting for the water trust board loan, grant loan that the council awarded. And then the Mountain View Middle School project as well, for both the money coming in, and then of course with the expenditures on the bottom. And then you see wastewater with adjusted damage claim pending, and then the wastewater treatment plant. There's a little small $1,900, but that is to cover the debt service payment. So that is all of the adjustments in the enterprise categories. Any questions on that?
So that's the 3 million part of that. Do we not make an adjustment for the 2 million that's been allocated for the hangars? That's been air, why is that not on there? But I don't, you follow what I'm saying? Why this one and not the other one?
Yeah, there's been this conversation on I think there was another 1.2 million coming from the state.
No, I'm sorry.
Which 2 million?
So there was the very controversial 5 million. And maybe I'm getting my numbers backwards, but part of that was allocated towards hangars, and part of that was allocated towards this water project right now that we're talking about.
Mr. Chair, councilors, the reason that that is not in here is because that money has not been finalized. The 3 million that is to go to the hangar.
This is the 3 million to the hangar.
No, this is the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's what.
This is this is the 2 point, which one is this one?
The infrastructure.
That's the southeast. That's the southeast. The southeast, we have all the agreements in place. The hangar, the 3 million for the hangar.
Has 2 million for the hangar.
Is it 2 or 3?
It was supposed to be 3.
Okay,
It's supposed to be 2.
And this is for the hangar.
3 for the hangar.
No, this would be for the.
This is the southeast.
So maybe I need to
Yeah,
correct.
because that's wrong.
That number's too high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So the 3 million for the hangar, we are still waiting for a finalized lease agreement and an MOU. with
Sure. No, that's fine. So that means, yeah, because that's what I was really confused about. So.
Was that for the engineering for the hangar?
For the southeast corner. Yeah.
But there's also engineering for the hangar.
The engineering for the hangar will be within that 3 million. This is an incorrect number. This number should be 2 million because the engineering should be coming out of that 2 million as well. So there's essentially only like 1.5 million for infrastructure on the south.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay. And that's what I noticed.
Yeah.
So let's get that.
We can make that adjustment.
So we'll make that correction.
Because especially as politically hot as that is, let's get that one fixed.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, moving on.
Okay, so what you have here, again, now you're comparing both the preliminary budget and the final based on those adjustments on the highlighted numbers. As you can see there, just the difference between, just as a visual graph, for just the general fund, beginning cash with the preliminary at 16, and we ended with 22. And as you can see, all of the revenue, just that small increase. Transfers, we made the increase of the 395, and expenses, that's just the Excel calculation of $1 difference. And then of course you're operating, and then you can see at the very end, ending cash balance, we anticipated in the preliminary 10 million, we ended with 14 million. Having a $4.5 million difference. And then when you look at just the total budget as a whole, you can see there, of course, we have the beginning cash balance, the revenue increasing a little bit, majority of that being because of that additional grant for the air center. Personnel did not change much. Operating, and then of course we have more projects this year, so there was a slight decrease on the ending cash balance. And with that, Mr. Chair and councilors, I will stand for any questions.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
Quick question. And we've had discussion, this is a thought that I had. So when we talk about reserves, we're talking about our 3/5 or 3/12 or 4/12, whatever it is. And then we talk about ending cash balance. Would it be appropriate to call ending cash balance unbudgeted revenue? Is that or is it an accurate description?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay.
Chair. And so the 3/12 reserve it's a set number. Well, 1/12 is set by the state. We've determined that we want to share.
Sure.
So that reserve money will take special city council action in order to enact. It will still take council action on the available cash balance, and that's cash on hand or whatever. I'm good with any term that you want to try to use.
I just want to make sure that we accurately understand what it is.
Yeah.
Unbudgeted income.
Based upon our budget, that number could be allocated based upon what the city council wishes to do.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so
It's unencumbered.
it's unencumbered and I would say.
Some budget carryover is encumbered.
I would say, because the reserve is actually restricted. I mean, it takes special action in order to get it done. The available cash balance is unencumbered, unrestricted.
Okay.
City council has every right to place it in there if they wish.
Councilor Payson.
At the last meeting, the proposal was to add another 112 to reserves. Is that still the plan?
No, sir. We are going to stay at the 3/12 based upon the conversations we were having at the city council. We believe that'll be adequate. Again, we would love to have a little bit more money back in necessary, but we believe the 3/12 is more than enough of taxpayer money to hold on to and not spend unless it's a rainy day.
So where is that approximate $2 million?
The money that we were talking about putting into that is now over in this column here.
So is there any plans on using that for, say, like the tennis courts?
In my recommended budget, there is not. It is remaining in the unrestricted, unencumbered funding right at this time. I believe if you want to talk about the tennis courts, general service committee and everything, that would be a great conversation to have. Over the years, it has not ranked as a high enough priority to dedicate all of the resources to that. And so all we're doing is maintaining that until that time. We have asked for ICIP funding in the past, but when we were not given any ICIP funding from the legislature to help us with the cost, the priority was not high enough in order to take care of it. So it is up to the city council to determine. And I would say that a longer conversation, I actually believe that our estimate of $400,000, we may be able to pull that down a little bit. And so if it is the action of the council through general services, finance or anything, happy to review that one in greater detail.
Is any portion of those $2 million going to any specific street projects?
No, sir. The $2 million is going into the unencumbered, unrestricted cash on hand. We have, I think you pulled down just a little bit on this for the road fund. We have, we're really proud of this as well too. We have $12 million going into the road fund.
But that includes sidewalks as well, not just the road.
That includes $250,000 for sidewalks.
Yeah, so
$250,000.
for sidewalks, but
and
so that number is a lot smaller for the roads themselves.
It's a lot more than what we've given in the past.
Yep.
We had a total of $9 million last year. We had a total of $7 million the year previous. I'm spitballing with really big numbers, but this was our effort in order to increase the amount of money going to the road fund. And again, I expect that as we walk through this thing, we would like to see more. There may be some more federal assistance coming, which will then allow us to expand out farther. Contractors and everything else. So
if I could interject, is that okay? You still have the floor.
I'm fine.
If I could interject, it's going to be very interesting to see going from 7 million to 9 million now to 12 million. At some point, there's going to be a number that we can't even spend that much in a year because we don't have the manpower, the equipment, or even other companies because there again, if feds were to put in, they're putting in with other communities too. And there's just so many people with the equipment to be able to do it. I think we are even, I want to be optimistic that we're going to be able to spend $12 million on the roads. I'm very, I don't know that we're going to be able to even expend that amount in 12 months.
I know Mr. Nahar is going to do everything that he can. But the challenge has been, even 4 years ago, we weren't spending this much money on roads, even though we had that much money dedicated out there. We had over 60 projects running at the same time, and we were completing less than 12 street projects. And so all this money was packed into these projects, and it was held in for that project. And then there were some projects that we never, ever did that we dedicated funding to because that project became less of a priority into the future. The whole idea about where we're at now is a very focused approach, and the streets that we list out there will get done. And I appreciate what you're saying as well too. So, and in my mind, if we can keep bringing that number up a little bit to get farther ahead of it, we want to do that. So.
And I think that we all heard from our constituents that roads are just a main issue. And I know that also within this, there's 500,000 directed strictly just within neighborhood.
Right.
And I know that there's been some talk, from what I understand, there was some talk about possibly 100,000 in each ward. But with this major flooding, it may be now that all of it needs to go down, to the bay. I don't know. We're going to have to just sort of see. Y'all are going to be working on a street project list and stuff. And so I'm in hopes that by this time next year, we're going to be able to see a significant difference in our community on our infrastructure.
And I should add as well too, because this is just the budget, we have 3 other grant requests out there, at least a minimum of 3 other grant requests for additional funding for roads as well too. So don't think that we're locked in there. Mr. Nahar has applied. I know there's 3 other co-op grants and everything else that we are working through. So don't think that this is the budget. This is a number.
Okay.
So.
Any other committee members before I go to Councilor?
I've got a question. I can't remember what it is. Go ahead.
But it also doesn't need the emergency funding that we're getting or the disaster.
No.
No, and because we're not sure of what that number is yet, the emergency funding has not been placed into the budget yet.
And so some of that money will be going towards the roads but like you said, we still need to redirect more, but that's also that doesn't happen.
And this is a budget to be able to send a DFA, to be able to get things started. Next month, budget can be adjusted, can be, yeah. So do you have other questions?
I did. Was it?
You want to go up?
Yeah, real quick. It's okay. It's fine. Let's move on.
All right. I'll just say this. I'm just excited. Yeah, go ahead.
No, we have that one correction.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
No, that's it. I
Yeah,
just wanna make sure that-
yeah. Just explain that we do have that one correction that was discussed concerning the Air Center. So they'll get that number adjusted correctly before we get to full council.
Sure.
So I'm just excited to have a year finally where there's money, extra money to take care of some of these infrastructure. What a city is really responsible for, that safety, welfare, infrastructure. And really, there's a lot of communities that are desperately, because of the COVID, really just mind-boggling trying to figure out. And I think that because of the actions and the strong hard work of staff last year making some hard decisions, it's going to help this community this year.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
As far as budget amendments from the council, you wanted to address those in this meeting or not?
If there are,
tell me what your desire is.
I don't want to see, I'm hoping not to see some 11th hour surprises, because for every $500,000, 250,000, 30,000 that we put into this budget at this meeting coming up, 1 or 2 things has to happen. Either we have to raise our expectation of what we believe is going to come in, or we have to get rid of something within the budget to make that happen. So if there are any considerations of amendments, it would be kind for the staff to know. And so this committee can work through that and work into that.
Sure. 'Cause the staff has been working with me, I think for the last couple of weeks now, on a budget amendment related to getting some more shading out there at our very, very used pool, very full every single day. A lot of constituents using that, and there's just not enough shade out there. And so I know they're working on it. I think they had hoped to have something for this meeting, but I assume it didn't happen, which is okay. But I am planning in any case to make some sort of budget amendment at the city council meeting. I just want to respect you and just.
Sure. And I appreciate that.
We do have some of this stuff. It is rolling in now.
Yeah.
I am waiting for at least a visual as to what it's going to be. The challenge, I'll talk about where we're at. We have an estimate that is below, not much, but below the $100,000, what we were estimating to put shade structure out there. But I believe it's going to take further conversation of the city council, because where the shade structure is intended to go, it will eliminate the ability to use the volleyball courts in the grass. So I think that is a determination that has to be made, because we spent money in order to install it. So I think it's a city council decision that says, nope, the shade is more important for the use of the public. So if you put it into the budget, that's fine. If you want to do it through a budget adjustment later, that's fine. But we will be ready at the council meeting with a show of what it is. I think the product looks very nice.
And that's the spirit of this, to make sure that staff knows, and you've been gracious to give them that information way ahead of time so they could work through that. Councilor Payson.
Joe, do you have an idea how much the cost would be to put bathrooms at the splash pad in East Second?
Mr. Chair, councilors, I know early on we developed out a number. I will say that it is not going to be anything less than $150,000 or a little bit higher. I cannot remember exactly. We had those conversations early on that project. I think the challenge is that the public restrooms are very difficult to incorporate. And I think that's why the city council chose not to include it in the project. But it will not be less than $150,000 to put it in any type of permanent structure that will have any amount of space in order to do those restrooms.
Right now, we would have the money to.
We would have the money. It's the determination as to whether or not bathrooms are necessary based upon the city council. I don't want to take away from individual city councilors saying, yes, we need them. We have others that say, no, we don't. I will tell you that public restrooms are very difficult to survive because of people that don't take care of, that are not willing to be nice to them so that we can take care of them. So I said that in the most politically correct manner I could, but it is, I mean, we've seen toilets broken. We've seen, graffiti. It's just really hard to maintain that. I know these over here, the toilet paper gets stolen all the time, and they're very difficult. And they become more expensive than they should be to maintain them for the people that really wanted to use them. So,
and as
I believe it's over 150. I think it's less than 250. I cannot remember that number exactly right.
As well as the perpetual care of it, of someone having to be there at least once, twice, 3 times a day to keep it clean, to keep it stocked, keep it locked, keep it unlocked.
And I'll digress just a little bit. I apologize for that, but this is one of the conversations that we have had with Jim Burris as our special service manager and everything else. We don't have a policy on when and why to provide public restrooms. And this has been a conversation with the porta potties all the way up. The porta potties we've been putting out there are for the sports associations. They've not really been for rec path users or any of those other uses. I am asking from staff and the Parks and Rec Commission and everybody to tell me how many should we have, what should we have? If we wanted to use the rec paths, we should have access points to at least keep them out on the rec path. And so that's where my position is right now. So.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate that. And I certainly, I think we need to have that larger discussion because there are some on the council who are for them, some in the middle and some against. And I think some of us move sometimes around, but we need to come to make a policy and get something on there and vote on it so that we have to stop just talking about it and we can say one way or the other that we're going to do it or we're not going to do it or what we're going to do. I do think that, as you came to us a while ago and said, these commissions need to be doing some work. I'd love to hear what the Parks Commission has to say about this. I'd love to hear what their opinion is on it. I'd love to, because I think that'd be good feedback for us. I have no idea what way they'd go on. I really don't. I've got my own personal opinions, but I want to know what other people. I'd also love for general services to really kind of tackle that issue as well and get some more input and opinion on, because, we have like the mayor, I won't speak for him, but he's very strongly against public restrooms from his criminal background. Not that he's a criminal, but it's working.
Well, that's the opinion.
Never know.
There we go. So if we can investigate the mayor's criminal background.
Well, and we can, finance and everybody can analyze what that long-term value is or what the long-term expense is. It is a general fund expense, recreation and everything. So it has an impact on what other services we provide. Happy to do that if that's what it is. And I think having a plan would at least help our constituents that are passionate about it either way as well too, understand exactly how we look at things. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Kenner?
No, I'm not going to say anything at the moment about that. I'll just say real quickly, it's not a water park, if it was a water park, you needed to change. This is just an area for kids to cool off and get wet. I don't anticipate people are staying there for 5 hours. There's not any, concession or anything like that. So I don't know if the cost outweighs the benefit. I could see public restrooms maybe in downtown area would be more appropriate, but anyway, that's just my opinion.
Off the record, it's already a bathroom. I'm just kidding. It's children. I should have said that, Councilor Mason.
I wasn't even funny.
But how children are. But anyway, we will move on. But if that, if that has the ability, like you said, going through Parks and Recs Commission to give information on. I know when we looked at public restrooms for downtown, we actually looked at what was happening up in Ruidoso and the struggles they had with public restrooms within parks and stuff. And but there may be additional information now. Okay. All right. With that one correction that's going to move forward and foreseeing potential presentation on that item coming forward, to entertain a motion for the resolution.
I'll move to recommend this will go to full council, the approval of resolution 21-XX, adopting a final budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022.
We have a motion.
Do we need to say with stated corrections? Does that be part of the motion?
That's fine. Yeah.
With the corrections.
Second.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. Send it to full council. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
We have 3-1. Okay. All right. Public participation. Everybody looks at the end of the table.
I'm speechless.
I look at speechless.
Somebody document this.
Somebody put that in the minutes.
Make sure that gets in the minutes.
All right. All right. If there's nothing else to come before us, we will stand adjourned at 10:39 a.m. Thank you, councilors, for toughing this out, but it's good information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Are you having?
Annabelle.
Oh, you're.